Imagine living 3,000 years ago, in a land where winters stretched long, forests covered vast territories, and fire was a resource as precious as metal itself. Late Shang to early Zhou records describe hunting expeditions not for meat, but for firewood. In the ancient world, energy did not come from oil, it came from wood, a resource that could vanish quickly as populations grew with each generation. Within that context, picture a massive stew pot set over an ancient hearth. To conserve fuel, people cooked everything together in one large cauldron. There were no stainless steel spoons, no gas stoves, only a boiling mass of water releasing thick clouds of steam. Then someone reached in with two long metal rods to pull out pieces of meat. The moment was ordinary, yet it became the origin of a chain of decisions that would stretch across 3 millennia. Interestingly, chopsticks did not emerge from refined cultural aesthetics, as we often romanticize today. They appeared as a solution to an energy problem in the ancient world. And when cooking methods changed, they quietly reshaped how people behaved around the dining table. Looking back, the history of chopsticks is not simply about a tool. It is about a civilization learning how to survive. Archaeological sites from the Shang dynasty, around 1200 BCE, reveal long metal rods used to retrieve food from simmering cauldrons. These artifacts reflect a technological reality. Ancient cooking vessels were deep, and temperatures were so intense that human hands could not approach safely. 2 metal sticks became extended arms, a primitive pair of tongs that allowed the body to overcome the biological limits of skin and nerves. At that time, chopsticks were not eating utensils. They were kitchen tools, similar to modern charcoal tongs. This fits the culinary philosophy of the era. The hearth was the center of life, and the kitchen was a technical workspace rather than an aesthetic space. What stands out is that these metal rods lacked hinges. They were simply 2 separate pieces, relying on hand control to create leverage and gripping force. The design reflected ancient mechanical pragmatism. If 2 independent sticks could lift hot meat from boiling pots without hinges, there was no reason to invent a more complex device. Ironically, the object born to serve the fire would eventually step onto the dining table, but the turning point came not from culture, but from a crisis of forests. By the late 1st millennium BCE, rapid population growth in northern China led to heavy deforestation. Firewood became scarce. The problem was clear: how could people cook food thoroughly while using less fuel? The solution arose from a simple physical observation: smaller pieces cook faster. As surface area increases, heat transfer accelerates according to the principles described by Fourier's law. A single 500-gram slab of meat might require hours to cook, but divide it into 10 smaller pieces, and the cooking time drops dramatically. Less time meant less firewood, and it was at this moment that the knife was effectively exiled from the dining table. If food was already cut into bite-sized pieces in the kitchen, placing knives on the table became unnecessary. No one needed to carve meat anymore. The distinction between kitchen knife and table knife began to disappear. This habit spread so widely that it evolved into a culinary norm. Dishes were sliced into manageable portions, cooked quickly, and served ready to eat. Western cultures followed the logic of bringing knives to the table so diners could cut their own food. East Asia followed a different logic: finish the work in the kitchen to conserve energy. Once food became smaller, chopsticks, originally kitchen tools, suddenly became the perfect instrument for lifting bite-sized pieces to the mouth. A survival-driven revolution quietly transformed dining behavior. During the spring and autumn period, when Confucius began systematizing social ethics, the knife gained a new symbolic meaning. It was no longer merely a survival tool, it became a sign of violence. In the Book of Rites, meals were framed as spaces of harmony. Placing knives on the table was akin to bringing warfare into a communal ritual. This philosophical shift reflected the era's reality. Feudal states were locked in constant conflict, and blades filled everyday life. To build a society centered on ritual rather than brute force, Confucian thought sought to distance people from symbols of violence. The dining table became an ideal starting point for behavioral change. When philosophy intervenes in objects, kitchen tools can transform into moral symbols. Chopsticks light, blunt, and non-threatening aligned perfectly with the image of a civil order that many dynasties wanted to promote. What might have begun as a practical choice was reinforced by an ideological system that shaped society for thousands of years. In ancestral halls, wedding feasts, and family gatherings, chopsticks became signs of order and peace. The knife retreated to the kitchen, where it belonged. Once chopsticks secured their social role, they began evolving differently across regions. In Korea, metal chopsticks became common during the Goryeo period, partly because aristocrats used silver utensils believed to detect arsenic poisoning. Over time, limited timber resources in colder climates encouraged a shift toward metal. Korean chopsticks grew shorter, flatter, and heavier, requiring a distinct hand technique and shaping a unique dining style. In Japan, the emphasis on fish, especially whole fish, led to tapered chopsticks designed for delicate bone separation. Lacquered pears became aesthetic symbols tied to wabi-sabi, the appreciation of understated beauty. In Vietnam, the communal nature of family meals encouraged longer chopsticks, suitable for sharing dishes from a central tray. The humid tropical climate made bamboo an ideal material, abundant, fast-growing, and more resistant to mold than many hardwoods. Each region represents a branch of evolution. From a shared origin, an energy problem posed 3,000 years ago, chopsticks became a fascinating intersection of physics, environment, behavior, and culture. The story of chopsticks did not begin with aesthetics, but with a dying fire struggling for lack of wood. That scarcity forced an entire civilization to seek new solutions, and those solutions created a dining system that functioned without weapons. While Western traditions retained the knife on the table as a symbol of individual agency, East Asian societies chose to remove it, building a social order rooted in harmony and restraint. Chopsticks, two slender sticks of wood, became a sign of discipline, a reminder that problems can be solved through simplicity rather than force. An ordinary eating utensil, seemingly lifeless, carries within it a history of resources, philosophy, and human behavior. And even today, every time we pick up a pair of chopsticks, we are reenacting a decision that has shaped how half of humanity eats for 3,000 years.